If you're a gardener, I am sure that you are well aware of the method of winter sowing in the months of January through March into clear plastic containers and setting these directly into your garden, sort of creating like a mini greenhouse that you really don't have to bother with. Now, this has been popular for a long time, and I think it's extremely popular right now because I've seen so many videos on it recently. Generally done using the plastic containers such as milk jugs and clear liter bottles, soda bottles, and food containers, throwaway disposable food containers that are clear plastic. So I've seen this done for years, but I've never tried it. So this is my first time. And if you want really in-depth information, there are so many videos that you can go to that are going to give you a lot more information than me. But since I'm using a different container than most, I'm going to show you what I'm going to be doing for my winter sowing. I'll kind of try to tell you the purpose of the winter sowing in a nutshell and how you could do it yourself with a lot of cold hardy seeds and perennials. That's the best thing to plant in these, in my opinion, are to get your perennials started early because they do like, many of them, a period of cold. Now, the most common method that I've seen for this is using gallon milk jugs. But I haven't been saving my milk jugs, so I didn't have anything like that. And I'll be honest with you, the idea of all those different kinds of plastic bottles in the garden is just kind of aesthetically displeasing to me. And I thought, well, maybe I can come up with something that's a little more attractive if I have to look at it for months at a time. Every time I go outside, I am going to want something a little bit nicer looking than that. So I found these at a very good deal, and these are Sterilite plastic bins. They're nice heavy-duty clear plastic. They measure about 12 inches long, 7 inches across, and 4.5 inches deep. And the first thing I want to do with these is give them drainage holes and water holes for the top. So I've been using my trusty drill here, and one by one I'm putting drainage holes in. So let's give that a try. I'm not going through all of them at once. I don't want them to crack. I'm putting 3 drainage holes and air holes. Whatever kind of plastic container you use, what you're doing in essence is you're just creating a mini self-contained greenhouse. So here are my holes for drainage in the bottom, and then I've drilled the same holes in the top. This is for the moisture to come through, such as the snow and the rain. And then I'm going to drill little holes in each side. I'm going to fasten those with wire and then probably tape all the way around the edge. But when we get to that point, well, then I'll explain that. So, here I've got my base. I'm going to put soil in about 1 inch from the top. I'm going to use potting soil or seed starter. Drilling the holes in 50 small bins here. That will give me 25 mini greenhouses in order to winter seed sow my seeds. And that's a good thing that I have so many because I have an awful lot of seeds here. The question is, what kind of seeds can you sow in this winter sowing method? And apparently, according to so many people that know more about this than I do, just about anything. Some you would want to sow earlier in, say, January, and that would be perennials and also plants that should have been sown in the ground in the fall. And maybe you didn't get them in. And plants that like things a little bit warmer, that would probably be tomatoes, peppers, and that sort of thing. You don't want to sow those until March with this method. But you can do sunflowers, and bachelor buttons, and zinnias. And if it doesn't grow directly sow for you very well in the ground, try it in your trays. In this case, mini greenhouses. Because I have a lot of things that they're supposed to be best if you direct sow them, and they just don't come up. So let's try something new. If one thing doesn't work, try something else. This is what you have to do in life, and this is what you have to do in gardening. And really, if you keep it up, eventually you'll get it right, and you'll be growing the plants that you've always loved. I've had to do that with many plants that I couldn't seem to grow. I couldn't get them to stay alive, and then I worked and worked and worked at it, finally came up with the right plan, and now those plants are doing well for me, so I'm going to move on to some others that I'm not very good with. So using moistened potting soil, I'm going to fill up the bottom of those little plastic mini greenhouses. And then we're going to plant some seeds. And then we're going to cover the tops and seal them. And then we're going to set it out in the weather and just leave it alone. You don't have to do anything after that. Just wait for a couple weeks and let your little seeds germinate. And once they germinate, then you'll start paying a little more attention to them. But for now, this is all you have to do. So when you moisten your soil, make sure that when you form it into a ball, it just doesn't drip water out, but it does hold together. James got me this great little mini shovel here, and it is perfect for this sort of work. So if you're filling up large pots or little bins like this, this is just does the job so beautifully. I love it. So here's the simple beauty about these mini greenhouses. You don't need grow lights, you don't need heat pads, you don't need to take up space all over your house, because we simply filled our little mini greenhouses or milk jugs, whatever you want to use, with moistened soil about 2 inches from the top in this case, or you can go an inch from the top. And then we're going to sprinkle the seed in or place it under the ground according to the seed packet directions. Then we're going to seal it with the lid, and we're going to set it out in the weather and just let it do its thing without all that extra gear, which personally I just don't like using any of that stuff. I just feel like it's sort of a burden in my opinion, but to each his own. Now, one thing I also like about these, as opposed to the milk jugs, is this is worth 2 milk jugs here, space-wise. This is, you've just got a lot more room to plant in. Generally speaking, the smaller the seed, you'll just sprinkle it on the surface, and with larger seeds, basically, you'll be putting in your little planting holes and dropping your seed in and lightly covering it up. Make sure you read your seed packets. Make sure you keep your seed packets, even if you empty them, so that when these plants are ready to put into the garden, you know how to take care of them. And then after they're planted, you're just going to put the top on and seal it with tape all the way around. I'm using wire in this case, and let nature do the rest. It's that easy. How thickly should you spread your seed? By all means, if you have a huge packet of seed and you have plenty to go around like I do here in this pack, then be very generous in your trays here, because eventually you'll be able to thin them out if it gets too crowded, but you won't take the chance of hardly anything germinating. I mean, you have more of a chance of things germinating the more seeds you put in. And if you don't mind thinning out healthy plants, then go ahead and do that. Here's a perfect example of what chickens do. I was talking about it in the last video. She's been poking around in my soil. It's a good thing I didn't plant anything in there yet. She's a little stinker. There is one seed I am taking extremely special care to make sure it's successful this year. And if you've watched my videos for any time, you know that I have terrible luck with sweet peas. One of the things that I would love to grow, I seem to get them started and then they just never quite make it to the flowering stage. And I'm convinced, I'm beginning to be convinced, I'm simply planting them at the wrong time of year. I think I'm planting them too late every single year. So I have so many sweet pea packets, and I'm going to try them in all kinds of soils, all kinds of conditions, and I'm going to make sure that this year I have sweet peas. Royal sweet peas, mammoth sweet peas, bijou sweet peas. I'm going to have sweet peas if it's the last thing I do. So I am trying several of the sweet peas in the mini greenhouses, and I soaked these for 24 hours. These are the royal sweet peas. I'm going to do a couple in the mini greenhouses. I'm going to do some directly into the soil with little greenhouses atop them. I'm going to do some in pellets. I'm going to try them in every way that I can until I'm successful with them. So, I reserved one of the mini greenhouses for a special packet of seed, which was collected for me from a young girl, and these are pansies, and she sent me these through the mail and also made a very sweet card. So I want to put these in a special spot in the garden, and I want to take very good extra care to see that they germinate. I'm sealing all the edges with an all-weather clear tape. Just to make sure that lid doesn't come off. So far I've managed to finish 13 of these little mini greenhouses. It just didn't take long at all. All the bins are marked inside and out. This could fade away in the weather, so we'll see. Well, we'll still know what's inside there because it's also got a tag inside. What I mainly sowed in these mini greenhouses were perennials, because they take longer to get started in your garden. Biennials, same thing. And hardy annuals. And hardy annuals are plants that could have been sown in the fall, but maybe you forgot to do it, because they also like a period of cold. So if you need a list of hardy annuals, it's just so easy to get one. I've told you about some of them already. Some plants really that you could have sown in your garden in the fall, but maybe you forgot to. Direct sown. I wouldn't even bother putting in these trays, mini greenhouses, or anything. I would sow them directly into the garden. I'll tell you what they are. Larkspur, poppies, foxglove, bachelor buttons. You just don't need to start them in trays. In fact, we'll be sowing some poppies directly into the garden today. I mean that not everybody might be familiar with that milk jug method that I was talking about in the beginning. So it's just as simple as a plastic milk jug, which is cut all along the diameter, with the exception of one little section so that you can open and close the lid, leaving about 5 inches for your soil, and then taping it along that open edge right here, and leaving the top open for the moisture to come in. So once again, the point of all this is to create an environment that is going to be very healthy for your seeds, for your growing plants. So you're getting full light. You're going to put these in a place in your yard or your garden or your patio that gets a southern exposure. So they get light all day long. The holes in the top allow the moisture to come in from the snow or the rain, and the holes in the bottom allow the excess to drain out. So you don't have to go in there and water these seeds. They are perfectly contained in these little mini greenhouses, and that is the only thing you have to do now, hopefully, is just wait for little green sprouts to come up, and when they do, then you'll have to keep a tighter, closer eye on them. But the principle is the same, whether you're using plastic milk jugs or these little bins such as I'm using here. Now, here is another winter sowing idea. This is a trough that I use. It stands up about 3 feet up off the ground. It's an old horse watering trough, and I use it for all sorts of experimental ideas. So, because I want sweet peas growing along the trellis behind this trough, I'm placing sweet peas, I'm planting them right in place where I want them, underneath these hard plastic glasses with holes. I've drilled in the top. The water's absolutely getting in there. They're nice, tightly in place. So the tulips, which I planted along here in the front, will have the tulips in the front. We hope to have the sweet peas growing up the vines in the back. So this is my second method of trying to do sweet peas. And my second method for winter sowing. Hi, Peggy. The good, the bad, and the ugly. We'll start with the good. The good is that the weather, the temperature outside is pretty nice today, so I am able to come out here and do some cleanup work and some winter sowing. The bad, well, I can't really think of anything that's too bad. But the ugly, well, there's a lot of ugly going on here in this garden right now. And I'm going to have to remedy that because it really is a mess here in the potager. I've got things everywhere and a lot of work to do. I've already done quite a bit. We managed to get a few things done. I got a huge pile of manure down from the barn from the girls. They gave me some black gold. However, this is just manure. These are just old eggs that were mixed up in it. I'm going to cover that with compost, but I was able to make this fairly good deep bed here in the potager, and I moved some blueberry bushes from another part of the yard into the potager. Actually moved 3 blueberry bushes. They were not in a good location, and even if they had grown decent blueberries, the peacocks would have devoured every one of them. So they had to come into the potager. This one, I put this one in the raised bed on this end, the new raised bed. And people might be inquiring, why are you moving blueberry bushes or anything at this time of year? For heaven's sake, it's January. What are you doing moving plants around? Bucket, like this little bucket of primroses, which I'm going to move to another garden. Well, I'm not a professional gardener, so I probably do a lot of things wrong. But I'll just use this as an example. I'm an artist, and oftentimes people ask me, where did you get your art training? And my answer is trial and error. I had no professional art training. I just made my mistakes and learned from them. And I probably do everything wrong, according to the art professors, but it works out for me. And so the same goes for gardening. It's trial and error. Some things that you might find very odd might work out for you even when all the experts say, don't do that. So I just go my own way. And like I said, I'm an amateur gardener. And maybe if I learned a little bit more, I'd be a better gardener. But I'm just enjoying myself doing the gardening. I don't do it for a living. So I just do it for pleasure. And I want you to look at things that way too. You don't have to be a pro to have a pretty garden. So in this raised bed, I have put over 100 tulip bulbs, about 6 inches deep. And then along this old iron bed footboard, cast iron footboard, I'm going to use this as a trellis for some snap magnolia peas, which I am winter sowing under these plastic, I don't know, I guess we could call them little plastic cloches. But cloches would not work in this case because you need to have that hole in the top in order for the moisture to get in. So these are not as attractive as I would wish them to be, but that's okay. They're all the same and they're all in a nice little straight line. So I'm going to put about 3 peas underneath each one of those. Now with this, I've just taken the bottle, I've cut off the very bottom of the bottle. And of course we've got the hole in the top to let in the moisture. And then place it over the pea seeds. Therefore the moisture can get in. But the seeds are planted exactly where I want them, so I don't have to transplant them from out of one of the containers because they're already in place. But the containers are protecting them in the meantime, in case it gets terribly cold. And it will. It's a beautiful day today, but it will get cold again. We've still got February and March, and we can get some pretty low temperatures. One of my sons called me this morning and asked me if I would be willing to adopt someone else's duck. This little fellow right here. Apparently, ever since this was a duckling purchased at the Tractor Supply store. He has been living in a pen, about 5 by 10 foot pen, his entire life. So he's only a year old, but still a whole year in a pen. Can you imagine? Anyway, so they asked my son if I would take in this duck, and absolutely, of course, I said yes. So here he is, and he's a little bewildered because he is in the potager now, which is quite large for someone who's been in a little pen all his life. But I don't want to introduce him to the other ducks yet, because they can be a little bit cruel and stuffy and snotty when a new duck comes along. So I'm going to give him a chance to adjust just to being free, basically. And he's just getting used to the place. I just really like him. He's such a handsome thing, except for that wacky feather right there, that wacky wing. Under the conditions in which he was living, he's never had a proper swim or a proper bath. So we're starting him out with just a big basin of water right here. And I suppose after about a week of being in here, I'll be able to let him out. The other animals have been coming by and saying hello. Everyone but the ducks. The ducks they're shunning him. Now, that's the weird thing about ducks. They're just not very friendly in the beginning. I normally don't let the chickens in here, but there's really nothing going on right now. I'm just doing some cleanup. But actually, I want to give him a name, and I'm always pretty good at giving names to everybody, but I thought it would be fun to let you pick a name for him, or suggest some names for him, and then I will choose the name I like the best. I'm sure those of you that watch these videos will come up with some great names, and whoever chooses, or whoever has the name that I like the best, you will be rewarded. I will send you one of my books, and that will be my thank you. The deal. Suggest your names for this. This is a male. You can tell he's a male by the way he quacks. He doesn't really quack, he more like squeaks. And he's also got a curly tail feather, a sure indication of a male duck. Don't know what kind of duck he is. He's very, very attractive, just very, very beautiful. And so he needs a name. So please leave your name suggestions in the comments, and I want to give him a name pretty quickly, so I would like to choose one of the names within the next 7 days, and whoever has the winning name will also receive one of my storybooks in the mail as your reward, and the reward of naming a beautiful duck. So now, I don't see why the same principle couldn't apply to direct sowing, where you're direct sowing in winter and yet you're giving your plants some protection. That's the purpose of polytunnels and that sort of thing, and garden cloches. So instead of putting your plants in the little mini greenhouses, why not, if you know where they're going, put them directly into that bed. This is just such a bed. It's a very deep, composted, raised bed in the potager also. It's just ready to have seeds put in it. So I'll need something, though, to cover up those seeds while they germinate and get going, to keep them from the frost and the cold weather. So the solution would either be to put a small tunnel over the top of this with plastic, which I don't happen to have at the moment, or maybe just a piece of clear plastic running across the two edges here. Or, because I have so many of these, just a larger size. These could go right over the top with drainage, with water holes right there in the top. So you may be thinking, I do not want all that ugly plastic stuff in my garden. And you know what? Who does? But if it helps your plants to grow, and it's something recyclable like these little bins, which you can reuse for anything else, even if they have little air holes in the top, you can still reuse these. And you put them in nicely and neatly, and they all match, then it can be just as attractive as putting up a low tunnel or a very small greenhouse right here. So it doesn't have to be unattractive if it's done in a neat and tidy way. And I would say that if I were to put 3 rows of these bins in with the seeds that I am planting to stay in this particular bed, I won't have to transplant them. They will just grow underneath these tiny greenhouses, I guess you could say. And then I just lift the greenhouses when I'm done and let the plants go. But because the bins are pretty good size, they're about, oh my goodness, at least 8 inches tall. That is a pretty good size for a plant to grow before you can uncover it and expose it to the world. Now I could also rig up a low tunnel in this bed, but I'm putting a low tunnel in another part of the yard for some more experimental winter sowing, so we'll talk about that in the next video. But these are just ways to get you started early in your garden, and I hope you try some of them. I'm basically experimenting with a lot of these things to see what works. So determined to have sweet peas this year. I have had 3 years of trying without ever having any great success with sweet peas. Much of it has to do, I think, with our very warm, humid climate. That's why I'm starting so early with these peas. And I'm trying so many different methods. One of the methods I'm doing are these deep root trainers made specifically for sweet peas. The idea is that with a normal peat pot or peat tray, planting tray, you've got about 3 inches, whereas sweet peas have super long tap roots. This gives you a lot more room for that taproot to grow. When it gets to the bottom, it breaks off and then it starts shooting out lateral roots along the taproot, giving you a much healthier, stronger plant. This is the theory anyway. And then when your plant is ready to repot, you simply open it up and take the entire thing out without disturbing the roots as much as you normally would by jiggling it and jaggling it, trying to get it out of the pot. So that's the idea behind this. And I'm going to fill this tray with deep root trainers full of regular potting mix. You could also use seed starter. And I'm going to carefully put in 2 wonderful little peas, sweet peas, into each compartment. So here we have 10 little sweet pea plants, possibly. If you think about how miraculous a little seed is, here you've got this hard, little round, mundane-looking seed, but inside that seed is a big, beautiful plant just bursting to get out. Just bursting to get out. All you need to do to set it free is to put it in the right conditions and give it the right care. And just think, 2, 4, 6, 8. 8 little hard pea plants, pea seeds, can give you 8 beautiful climbing peas and countless bouquets if all goes well, and I am pretty convinced that this year it will. I'm going to plant my sweet peas about 1 inch deep in these deep root trainers. I'm going to put 2 seeds, 2 soaked seeds, into each hole, and that way they can grow up together, twine round and round each other, and have a companion, live happily ever after. At least that's the plan. Our portable garden lunch is beef barley soup, hot tea, and a banana. Ooh. And this is really simple soup to make. You can use either quick barley or hard pearl barley. Great on a cold day like today, just to not have to go in the house and get your lunch, just have it there, right there on the porch waiting for you. Sit out in the middle of your garden, look at the work that you've done so far or are about to do, and enjoy a really nice hot lunch. So, and the tea is Harney and Sons Black Tower of London. Yes, Tower of London. This is such a good tea. This tea is a black tea with bergamot, strong tea, and of all the black teas that I drink, this is my favorite. And I've lost my little cup somewhere here in the garden, but being a thermos, I can drink it straight from the thermos. And it's just as good out of the thermos on a cold day like this as it would be in a beautiful china cup. So, cheers. Make sure you make yourself a nice hot lunch. So after observing this little guy all day long, I've noticed a few things about him, personality-wise, which might help you come up with a name. Number one, his wing is really wacky. There's something wrong with it. I don't know if that was a birth defect, or maybe he was injured at some point, but one of his wings just sort of like sticks straight out. Right now he's got it tucked in a little bit better, but most of the time it's just sticking out straight. See, look at that. Doesn't seem to affect anything in his life, but also he is pretty tough-minded, I think. When the dogs came up to the fence to meet him, they stuck their noses through, and he went right up to the fence, and I thought he was going to be friendly, but he kind of like just snapped them on the nose, both of them. And then a rooster came in here, and he chased the rooster away. So he's pretty territorial, he's a pretty tough guy. Or maybe he's just socially backward. It could be. He's not used to having too many companions, I guess. He doesn't mind the hens, though. He seems to like the hens. So there's a little bit about his personality that you might want to consider in thinking of a name for our little mystery duck. Oh, by the way, he's a khaki Campbell, I found out. Looked him up online. I used to have a khaki Campbell, but it was a female, so she didn't have the same markings. So I did not recognize the breed. But he's, like I said, he's a very handsome fellow. Got a mind of his own, obviously, and come up with some good names. That's about it for today in Hopalong Hollow. If you would like more information on winter sowing in low tunnels or containers, one of my go-to gardeners is Tanya from Fresh Cut, Kentucky. She's straight to the point. She's a very knowledgeable flower gardener, and I just really like her. I'll put a link to her YouTube channel below. So from Hopalong Hollow, this is Jerry, and little Mr. No Name right there, who is looking forward to all your submissions for his name, because nobody wants to be without a name for very long. Anyway, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.